Yeah, Crunchy and Smoothie wants to encourage you and help you learn how to handle pronouns. It's just a little 14-second little video and a book that they're promoting and so forth for Trans Awareness Week, becoming more and more of a deal. Hey, look at that. Oh, there we go. All right. So I actually want to not just spend all night sort of griping about this week in woke. I want to give you guys just some of the glimmers of hope that are out there, because there are actually cracks in the system. A lot of this woke ideology is being pushed so hard, so fast, so far. There's not just pushback from what you would consider to be expected areas, but there's pushback from unexpected areas as well. So this was published in an online magazine called The Federalist. Democrats like me are furious with our party for pushing gender insanity. The gal who wrote this article, she makes it clear, I am not a conservative, never have been, and I never will be, but I am sick to death of this stuff. So she writes, still I'm grateful to the Federalist for publishing this because no one else will. That's because U.S. media has been completely corrupted by an industry that is hell-bent on persuading ordinary Americans that there is such a thing as gender identity and that some people are transgender. I mean, how dare you say stuff like that right now? And this gal is coming from a traditional feminist point of view, technically, and she's saying this is garbage science. This is absolute garbage. The truth is that gender identity does not exist in any real material sense, and transgender is simply a made-up concept that is used to justify all kinds of atrocities, such as convicted male rapists and murderers being housed in women's prisons. And the language gets even more florid from there. So I just went ahead and cut it off at that point. But on and on she goes. So we've talked a lot about where this is showing up in culture and who's pushing it, and it continues to rise to the surface in a lot of ways. But there are reasons to realize there's some glimmers of hope. There are a lot of people pushing back against this. Again, some folks that we would sort of expect or we would think push back against it, and then others are sort of unexpected allies, if you will. There's some cracks in the educational system as well with some of what's going on. The photo there on the far left, you can find hundreds of these kinds of declarations on social media right now. The importance of that photo on the left, it's a Twitter post with a couple of pictures inside of it, is again this cycle in which people who are pushing critical theory, critical race theory, the woke agenda inside of schools will continue to say publicly and on certain news programs and news outlets, there's no such thing as critical race theory being taught in schools. And then they will turn around and they will sell their curriculum to K through 12 schools pushing critical theory and critical race theory and all of this kind of stuff. So more and more and more and more, these teachers are just out in the open. They're putting it on social media. Hey, here I am actually teaching critical race theory to your kids. Here I am, Kimberly Crenshaw. She puts a little picture there. Kimberly Crenshaw is the gal who coined the term intersectionality. We talked about that a few weeks ago. You hear that every now and then. Again, that's just absolutely critical to the whole woke universe, how oppression works, how victimhood works, and so forth. And so, like I said, you just find these teachers who are just saying, hey, I don't care what the school board or the parents or the law says. This is what I am teaching in our classes. There in the middle is a positive thing, but it's a very positive thing because of how absolutely rotten the original situation was. So this guy was the president of a major school board in Scottsdale, Arizona, and that was one of these areas where this controversy had reached the surface. A lot of parents were showing up, and they were telling the school board, we don't want critical race theory. We don't want any of this in the curriculum. We want to see the curriculum. The school board kept pushing back. the president of the school board actually hired investigators to begin collecting dossiers on the parents who were showing up at meetings, and he was collecting personal information about them, photographs of their children, and information about where they lived and where their children went to school inside of the district. Well, all of that's illegal. So he's been voted out as president of the school board, and he is now under police investigation. So why is he doing this? Because he doesn't want parents having a say. We've talked about this. The whole educational structure inside of the critical theory universe, it's this larger Marxist universe. Parents do not have rights to children. And again, you follow this through and you see more and more of this, not just in the academic literature, but in the popular literature as well. Parents don't have rights to kids, but the government does. So people like this are all over the place. But this is good news, right? He's out, at least for now. This is really, really bad news right there. Dr. Allison Walker, biological male, identifies as a female. The reason this is interesting right now is because Dr. Walker has just published a book and is now on the circuit. Can you tell me what this is a euphemism for? Minor attracted individuals. Yeah, for pedophiles. So his book, and you can read the foreword to his book online several places, it is about normalizing pedophilia. But we're not going to use the word pedophile or pederasty or pedophilia. We're going to use a euphemism like minor attracted individuals. So this is him at a private school, some John Jay school. I'm not even sure exactly where it is. But he's given his presentation. And so it's becoming more and more normal all the time. So these folks exist, the pushback is immediate, but you guys need to understand that this stuff is it's going to hit the surface more and more. You will see it and you will hear it more and more. This is an inevitable snowball making its way down the hill. A lot of people probably would have said, even today or in the recent past, this is impossible. This will never actually happen. It is so outside of the bounds. And yet, there's they have the off-brand TED Talks, the TEDx Talks. There's a couple of those out there with not this individual, but with other individuals saying exactly the same thing. We need to normalize this and understand how it works, and we can't stigmatize this kind of behavior, right? So, chances are we're going to see more and more of that before that goes away. I want to show you this. So this dude, I just want you to know. So I pay a lot of attention to this dude, James Lindsay. Okay, I can't. He's very bright. He is a crusader against critical theory, critical race theory, wokeism. He's also very crass. So if you read his stuff and listen to his stuff, understand that Pastor Phil is not telling you to go listen to his stuff. But he is very intelligent, very well read, and he's right at the forefront of all of this. Now here's part of what's interesting about him. Years ago, he was actually in the circle of individuals, essentially in the circle of individuals that we would have called the new atheists. He's a hardcore atheist. He now calls himself an agnostic. And look at what he says after dealing with critical theory, critical race theory, dealing with these people now for quite a while, written several books, conferences, the whole thing. The fight against wokeness is a tremendous spiritual battle in which normal people, especially children, are the primary battleground. It must be thought of as a spiritual battle. This is coming from an agnostic who does not believe in God. So what does he see? He doesn't believe God exists. He may be much closer than he thinks to belief itself, but he sees it. He says this is, and he'll say that this kind of stuff, this is not normal behavior. This is irrational, immoral, and he is now actually saying this is a spirit. I don't know what he would mean by spiritual battle, not believing that God exists, but if he thinks this is a spiritual battle, and he's absolutely right. And there's still a lot of people in progressive Christian circles who will not say this. They will not say this. They would, if they saw some of my videos, tell me how evil I am, but they won't say this. And I just love these kinds of things, right? I tell you guys this from time to time. You only get this kind of news here, right? So there's our friendly agnostic telling us that this is a spiritual battle. And then one more knucklehead on Twitter. To all 7 of the people who pay attention to me. The reason I put this up here is that I actually say this quite often, and sometimes get some interesting responses to this, but this is in response to a major Presbyterian church in New York City a few days ago, well, I guess about 2 weeks ago now, putting a certain kind of vaccine mandates on their services. They were actually, at the time, they were separating their congregation between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. That would be like me saying, if you want to sit on the main floor, you have to show security your vaccination card. All the rest of you losers can sit up in the balcony somewhere, right? Because you're going to kill the rest of you. You know, that's what that would be like if I did that. Now, the reason this stuck out is that Redeemer Presbyterian has been an influential church in evangelical and Protestant circles for a little over a decade now. May or may not know the name Tim Keller, but Tim Keller was a very prominent and wonderful pastor for a very long time. He founded Redeemer Presbyterian. He retired from there just a few years ago, but that's his church that has now gone to vaccine mandates. And I bring this up because, you know, I see this a couple of weeks ago and I get all grumpy on Twitter. That's why Twitter exists, is so you can get grumpy on Twitter, you know, with people that you don't know. But the trend continues to grow. There was another pastor in the Pacific Northwest put out about a 2.5-minute long video telling his congregation, we're going to go to full vaccine mandates, or the whole, you need a negative COVID test in the last 72 hours if you want to actually come into our building. We're going to do everything that King County tells us to do. He actually says inside of this video, we have told our local officials we will not claim any special religious exemption. We will not be treated like a church. We'll be treated like every other organization that's out there. And what these kinds of pastors are saying is becoming more and more common all the time. I know of now at least 2 churches in Colorado Springs that have their own versions of vaccine mandates, and others that are considering vaccine mandates. Even as far as going, if you want your child to go to youth group, they have to be vaccinated to go to youth group, okay? So now, I am not right now taking a stance on vaccines or not vaccines, but I am, as a pastor, saying that's not the kind of thing a church does. That's not the kind of thing a church does, right? The church is open to the community. I mean, if I said, if you're homeless and smell bad, we're going to stop you at the door and we're going to turn you away, what would you think of me as a pastor? Yeah, and that's what you should think of me as a pastor. When these doors are open, these doors are open, right? And some of these pastors live in areas where they have pressure with this. Governor Polis just put a vaccine mandate in place for about 3 or 4 counties in the Denver metro area. So if you have a church of over 500 people, he now wants you to require vaccine cards in order to actually walk into the building. So there are pastors who face pressures that we do not face right now, but I think this is the case. If it comes down to it, this needs to be the last place in town that doesn't require a vaccine to get in, because this is a church. This is a church, and the doors are open, for Pete's sake, right? Okay, I can actually feel the blood rushing to my face and brain as I talk about this kind of stuff. But there's this inclination inside of parts of the church trying so hard to not just be relevant, but to be compliant with the rest of culture. And they believe it's a way in which they can reach the rest of culture by actually closing their doors to parts of culture. And so in some ways, churches who think this way, they're always 2 or 3 steps behind the rest of the world, but the rest of the world's gone on ahead, and the church says, well, you know what? We're going to go ahead and walk down this path too. So the churches do these kinds of crazy things from time to time, and I hope and pray that these pastors come to their senses and realize the church is different. It's different than every other place. I think we've said this on Tuesday nights before. There is one institution on the face of the earth that appeals to an authority that is larger than the state. There's one. And what institution is that appeals to the authority that's larger than the state? It's the church. So I belong to a different authority. And if the state aligns with that authority, it aligns with that authority. If it doesn't, it doesn't.